And if you would check that audio, please, sir, that'd be lovely. Should be good. I restarted loopback, so no echo at the beginning here. Check 1, 2, 3. Check.
Yep, sounds good on my end.
Awesome. Well, it is time for
Let me mute
a
that.
show.
All right, got that muted. Got the list pulled up. Got the Discord tab.
All right.
All right, I'm ready.
I should let everyone know we're here on the Facebooks and all the places.
Well, you don't have to.
I mean, I don't have to, but I will.
Tyler's in the chat. Shout out to Tyler.
Tyler, there he is. Going good, sir.
Tyler.
Glad you're here.
It's going great now that you're here.
Yeah. All right, well, let's start this show. Here we go in 3, 2, 1. Greetings, programs, and we're back for another episode of the Nerd Cave Retro Show. My name is Jason Robbins.
And my name is Derek Diamond.
So how was your weekend? We did record an extra hefty podcast on Saturday.
Yeah, so Saturday was actually a really busy day for me. So I met two friends of mine, Chad Sanders and Thomas Carter Rochester at UWF, which is a local university we have here. We filmed part of Plain Jane there. We filmed a teaser for Chad's short that we're going to be shooting in a couple of months. So we got there at sunrise. And then from there, I went to Milton, which is about half an hour away, to work a wedding with my wife. Then came home, and then we did the D&D podcast. So I slept real good.
I'm sure you did.
On Saturday. No, actually I did. I got one of the best nights of sleep that I've had in like the last 2 or 3 weeks. So,
Yeah.
And then yesterday just did little to nothing, which was great.
Yeah. And if you're wondering what we're talking about, if you're not a patron, we dropped a almost 2-hour podcast on Saturday for our upcoming Dungeons and Dragons campaign. It was me and Mr. Derek and Mr. Joey Image. We're creating our characters with Wally Phelps. Our DM is guiding us to making our characters and everything, because the three of us haven't played Dungeons and Dragons in a long time. At least I know I haven't.
I haven't ever played it, so this was a brand new experience for me.
So yeah, it was 2 hours of us making our characters, having a good time, having some laughs, and then coming up next month is going to be our campaign. So the next couple of months is going to be our D&D campaign, which we're going to call Nerd Cave Retro Quest. So if you want to be a part of that, go be a patron. For as little as $1 a month, you can get that.
That sounds like a great title for a video game, too.
Yeah, it does. I like that.
But what about you? How was your weekend?
It was good. I played a little bit more Indiana Jones on the Xbox Game Pass, and I think I'm about 11 hours now, so I only have a few more hours till the end of the game. And then it's another game under the belt for the year.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't really play anything over the last couple of days. Well, other than a couple of mobile games, but that's really been about it. Yesterday, I was just in kind of a mood to just sit on the couch and watch TV. So
yeah.
I have been doing a WrestleMania marathon because we've got WrestleMania coming up in the middle of April. So I do the same thing with the Royal Rumble. I try to start from the beginning and watch all the previous ones leading up to, the current one. So like for WrestleMania, this one will be 41. So I just started 6 today. So luckily I have a job where like I have a 3-monitor setup, kind of like I have now. And my laptop is kind of situated to where only I can see it. So I usually put, my shows or whatever I'm watching on there, so no one else is the wiser.
Tyler says he's playing a human paladin currently in his
Nice.
D&D campaign. That's I think that's what Joey is for the upcoming campaign.
Yeah. I'm a halfling wizard named Lucius Nightingale.
And I'm a barbarian dwarf named Friggin.
Just that you're going to get so tired of me going, "You barbarian."
What was I going to say? Oh yeah, I was going to say over the weekend, or at least the last week or so, Derek. I always know what Derek's doing whenever in our little group chat. We'll just get a picture of whatever WrestleMania he's watching currently.
Yeah. I mean, all of us in the group chat are wrestling fans, and in Joey's case, he was a wrestler himself. So I always get like I always like talking wrestling, but this time of year is a little more exciting because you've got the build up to WrestleMania and everything. So
It's coming up fast. February's
Yeah.
almost over. That's crazy.
yeah, I know. Yeah, Saturday will be in March, and then after that, the year will be a quarter of the way over.
Wow. Don't remind me.
Yeah, it's going fast.
But yeah, it's not going to be a normal episode tonight. It's going to be a top 5 episode, so you know what that means.
I love these.
Yeah,
I
so-
love these top fives.
We're going to do our list. We're going to do our list, then your list, and if we have time left over, we have a few news stories to get to. And but if we don't get to them, we'll just push them to next week because I don't think very many of them are time sensitive or anything. I don't think. So we'll just save those if we don't get to them. But I'm ready to jump into this top 5 that was suggested to us by Mr. Joey Potato himself, Mr. Joey Image.
Joey Spud himself.
Yeah. So it's top 5 first games and franchises. And this, I was telling you earlier today, this was a tough list to write.
Yeah, and this was a type of list that I knew like all the options that I wanted to choose from, but it was pretty tough to put them in order. And it was also like what classifies as a franchise.
Yeah.
Because you have some games that like they had one sequel. I don't know that I would call that a franchise.
Yeah.
But to me, if you have 3 or more, then that classifies as a franchise. So that's what I based my list off of. And this was really tough to put them in order, especially the 3 to 5 range.
Well, to get us started, do you want to do yours first? Start with the honorable mentions?
Yeah, sure. So my honorable mentions, I have 5. So this really could have been a top 10 list.
Yeah.
My first honorable mention is Mass Effect. As much as I love 2 and 3, I gotta say I still think the original Mass Effect is the best.
Yeah.
At least from my experience, it had a great beginning to an incredible story
Yeah.
that spanned over the course of the franchise. So
Well, the original is on my list as well, and I would say that definitely if you're gonna play it, play the remaster or the remake because the original one, while it was great, it was a mess of a game, which they very much fixed in Mass Effect 2. But if you go back and play the remaster, then they took all the mechanics from 2 and just kind of retrofitted them into part 1. So go play that version of the game if you've never played it.
yeah, and I know Mass Effect is it's on your list as well, so I won't go too far into it. But my other honorable mentions, Super Smash Brothers, the original for the N64. We talk about the famous commercial with the characters dressed up and they're beating the crap out of each other in a sunflower field. This was like a dream come true for Nintendo fans. Like, what would happen if Mario and Link were in the same game? What if Fox and Samus were in the same game? And we got that. Is it the best Smash Brothers? No. But I'm not going to lie, I still have fun going back and playing the original Smash Brothers. Like, it doesn't look that great, but it's not broken and unplayable. like some of the N64 games are.
Yeah.
My next honorable mention is the original Super Mario Brothers. It's the foundation of platform gaming. You know, it's not higher on my list just because I think what's in my actual top five, they are better games. But this is one that I think you have to respect because of what it did for gaming. It's one of the most important games of all time.
Oh, absolutely.
Next up is the original Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat 2 is widely considered to be the better game. While I don't necessarily disagree with that, there's something special
Yeah.
about that first game, you know, and you think of what it spawned from the numerous sequels to the movies, the Mortal Kombat Legacy web series that came out a few years ago. I love the original Mortal Kombat. I love just those original base characters, the basic storyline. I'm just a big fan of the original.
It's so tame now.
Oh yeah,
But
and it
back
caused so
then-
much controversy.
I mean, it
back
caused
then.
Senate hearings back in the 90s. I mean, and then you go back and look at it now, and it's nothing. But it's just, I don't know. It's one of the most important video games ever, I think. I mean, it's up there. I think Super Mario Brothers is probably the most important video game of all time. Mortal Kombat is definitely up there in that list of most important games of all time.
Yeah, and specifically in the fighting games list.
Yeah,
you know, it's
absolutely.
probably one of the three most important when it comes to that genre. And then my last honorable mention is Donkey Kong Country. I've been kind of going down a Donkey Kong Country rabbit hole lately with, like, you know, re-listening to the soundtrack and watching some gameplay and whatnot. We've talked about it before. This game was really ahead of its time with the graphics.
Oh, yeah.
The characters are fun. You know, reintroducing Donkey Kong to a new generation, making him a hero, introducing like Diddy, Cranky, Funky Kong, you know, the whole Kong family. And just it's such a fun platforming game, frustratingly hard at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
But-
yeah.
I love the original Donkey Kong Country. I love everything about it. I love that world that they built with that game.
It's such a good game, but it is so rage inducing. I mean, that is controller throwing anger at that
Yep.
game sometimes.
Yeah, oh no, absolutely. So moving into my actual list, my number 5 is Sonic the Hedgehog. And you might be surprised that it's that low. I love the original Sonic game, but again, it kind of pales in comparison to 2 and 3. But it introduced a different style of platforming than what we were used to with Mario.
Yeah.
Much like Super Mario Brothers, it laid the foundation for the success of 2, and then the success of 3, and so on and so forth. It's still fun to go back and play. It's just a more bare bones version of a 2D Sonic game. But I still love it. You know, like it has such, you know, iconic music tracks, iconic locations, and it introduced, you know, one of my favorite franchises of all time.
It's still, you know, whenever you fire that game up, even though I never had a Sega Genesis growing up, there's still so much nostalgia around that game because that is the one game I played, you know, of the Genesis back then. Like, I had a couple of friends that had a Genesis, but man, when it starts up and you hear that music, it's just, man, it just transports you right back to that time and place.
Dun, 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 dun. It's just so catchy. I love it. Number 4 is Banjo-Kazooie. You may not think of this as a franchise, but this does have multiple games. You have Banjo-Tooie, which came out a couple of years after Kazooie did. Then you had Grunty's Revenge for the Game Boy Advance and Nuts and Bolts for the 360. So I've said this numerous times on the show before, but I think this is the best 3D platformer of all time. I think it's better than Super Mario 64.
Wow, that's big words.
Well, so Mario 64, it laid the foundation for 3D platforming.
Yeah.
But Banjo-Kazooie perfected it. It was made in the phase of the collect-a-thon era where you had to collect all these different objects to progress through the game. But it just introduced you to such a fun and wacky world. I would have never thought that, a talking bear with a bird in his backpack would make for a fun game. But I still remember getting this game when it came out, and I played it for the first time, and I couldn't put it down. And I was so disappointed with Nuts and Bolts. I understand they wanted to try something different, but we all wanted a true third entry in the main timeline of Banjo-Kazooie. But
shots fired in the chat room. Nick showed up and said Donkey Kong Country isn't that hard. I remember beating it when I was like 7 or 8. I said,
well, this has been another great episode of the Nerd Cave. I'm kidding.
Doesn't it feel like Nuts and Bolts is kind of like what they, if you look at Tears of the Kingdom, and that, what is that called, where Link can put stuff together? Isn't that kind of like an early, or like that's what they wanted to do with Nuts and Bolts?
Mm-hmm. I just didn't think Banjo-Kazooie was the right property to try that with.
Yeah.
Because, like, Tears of the Kingdom isn't a huge departure. Like, the core aspect of Zelda is still there. With Banjo-Kazooie, like, at the beginning of the game, you have all of your moves taken away.
Yeah.
So you can't do anything like fly or anything you could in the first 2 games. I
hate when they do that in sequels. Immediately take away everything that you could do, and you have to go back to 0. Like, oh, I hate that.
My number 3 is Pokemon Red/Blue or /Yellow. They're all essentially the same game. I have played through this game, or these games. It's confusing because it's 3 versions of the same game, but I've played through these numerous times. I have so many fond memories of, going on road trips when I was a kid and sitting in the back seat of my parents' car playing Red and Blue. Just even whenever I would beat the game, I would want to start again and choose a different starter, because it, for the most part, changes your entire planning strategy of which Pokemon you catch based off of like the one you start with. So there's great replayability there, and the phenomenon of Pokemon was huge when I know it was big in Japan before it hit the States, but like I remember going in Books A Million and seeing strategy guides, VHS tapes of the anime. It was a huge phenomenon when it happened, and these are still some of my favorite games of all time. My number 2 is the original Halo Combat Evolved. You say the word Halo to me, and I can picture my friend Jonathan's house that we used to go to every Friday or Saturday night after this game came out. He had this huge living room where we'd all bring TVs, we'd all bring our Xboxes. I remember the layout of the room, where I would put my TV, everything about it.
LAN parties were so fun, man. That is a thing lost to time. That is just, it breaks my heart that is not a thing anymore.
It's, if you were to make a video game time capsule, LAN parties would absolutely be in it.
Yep.
And just, Pizza Hut and Mountain Dew Code Red and Doritos chips a lot of those were consumed on those nights. Like, we would literally stay up all night playing the multiplayer and even the campaign. The campaign, I think, doesn't get enough credit. I love the story of that original Halo trilogy.
Yeah.
Is one of the best stories told in gaming.
And not only that, but just those LAN parties were the foundation of some of my lifelong friendships. Seriously. Like, I still talk and hang out with the people that, friendships were forged around those LAN parties.
Yeah, absolutely. And my number one, to the shock of absolutely no one who listens to this show, is the original Legend of Zelda. This has to be my number one. Not only is it my favorite franchise, it's what introduced me to video games. I've told the story before. I played this at my aunt's house after school when I was a kid. Had I not gotten into the Legend of Zelda, I probably wouldn't have gotten into video games like I did, and we wouldn't be having this podcast. So
Yeah.
it's going to be number one on my list for a lot of reasons. And as a game, it's kind of underrated. It still holds up fairly well. I mean, yeah, you could tell it's an older game, but like I still enjoy going back and playing it. It's still got a good story. It's kind of non-linear,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool.
That was so innovative at the time. People can say whatever they want about The Legend of Zelda, whether they like it or don't like it, but at the time when that game came out, that was unheard of. That amount of just freedom in a game.
And you could save your game.
How novel.
And then Super Nintendo games, you couldn't even do that.
I
and
know.
then they were doing it when, 85 with Zelda.
I wonder if the My
86,
NES
excuse
cart
me.
still has the save files, because they said that those batteries would only last like 10 years or so, and here we are 35 years later, and it's like, when is that battery going out?
I don't know, I'd be curious to find out.
I don't know. I haven't fired up Legend of Zelda on the actual NES in a while. I might have to do that.
Yeah, you should. But that's my list.
Awesome. Well, of course, I'm going to start off with some of my honorable mentions. Of course, I have 5 as well. This was a hard list to write. I had to whittle stuff down, man, because like you said, there's a lot of stuff, the games that I love that only had like maybe, 2 entries. I'm like, does that really make a franchise? But there's a lot of franchises out there that I love, but it's hard to whittle this stuff down. So, in my honorable mentions, at number 1, BioShock. That first game,
good game.
one of the best, just most atmospheric and first person shooter / like magic sort of stuff. And just the way that game started, with the plane crash, and then you had to get in that buoy, and it was actually an elevator and took you down to the city, and then just those visuals were just, I'll never forget that. Just that game is just insane.
BioShock's one of those games that even if you didn't play it, you knew somebody that did.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I remember I didn't get into it as much as some of my friends did, but it's one that I liked watching other people play.
And I still say, coming across a Big Daddy for the first time is still one of the most frightening things that has ever happened in a video game. You hear that, you hear that whale sound, and you hear the clomping of the feet, and you're like, what the hell is about to happen?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And this one, I know people are going to think I'm weird for not having this in my actual top 5 list, but Ninja Gaiden is in my honorable mentions. The original NES game, probably one of my favorite NES games and one of the best first games in a franchise. But there was just so many other things that just had to go ahead of it.
That's the tough part about these lists is like usually 1 and 2 are pretty easy. But when you get to that 3 to 5 range, it can be tough to make the cut. There's been times that I've tweaked my list like 5 minutes before we went on the air.
Justin in the chat room says, I think you can have someone copy the save file before they replace the battery. And yes, I've actually been listening to our friend Brian Dunaway, who's been on the show before. He's actually been doing that lately, where he'll get a game off of eBay, and then whatever save files are on there, he will actually extract them off and save those actual save files, just because, That just
That's awesome.
So that's what he's been doing. I need to do that with a lot of my old save files, especially on like Link to the Past and things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
And at my third honorable mention, of course, is Halo for all the reasons you mentioned. I don't need to say any more. Everything you said was correct. And at my number 2 honorable mention, Mega Man. Not as good as Mega Man 2. And then, of course, the series got, had its highs and lows. And Mega Man is still a solid game, but, it's not the best game in the franchise. And it also is the winner for one of the worst game covers of all time. But would we really remember the game if the cover was good? Who knows? But, it went on to make some of the greatest side-scrollers in history.
Yeah, this is one of those games that you have to recognize its place and its significance. While it may not be the best Mega Man game, it's one of the few that I have actually played, and I still enjoy it. Is Mega Man 2 better? Yeah, but Mega Man on its own is by no means an awful game.
Because think about it. It was kind of a flop when it came out, but the people that worked on it loved it so much, they literally stayed late after work to make part 2, basically for free. Never got paid to make part 2. They made that in their spare time. That's how much they loved Mega Man, or Rockman in Japan. That's
I didn't
saying
know
something.
that.
Yeah, they
That's
literally
crazy.
made it in their off time, and it's one of the greatest games of all time. That just shows you how much love going into something can change its trajectory.
Oh, 100%. It's the same with music and movies. You can
Oh, yeah.
tell when care is put into it.
Yeah, when heart is put into something, that it makes everything just so much better.
Mm-hmm.
And at my number 1 honorable mention, Metroid.
Oh, the original Metroid's so fun.
Yeah, it's a long game. You definitely
Yeah.
need a walkthrough to play it these days, because even back then as a kid, it took me years to beat that game after writing out the maps on graph paper to memorize where to go and what to do. That game is still, it created an entire genre along with the number 5 game on my list, the actual top 5 list. I just said Metroid was the number 1 honorable mention. This game and Metroid created an entire genre called Metroidvania. My number 5 is, of course, the original Castlevania for the NES.
Beautiful segue, by the way.
Yes. Castlevania. I still love playing Castlevania. It's hard as hell, but it's one of the few NES games that I can still beat, in one sitting. And if you don't have it, they do have the Castlevania collection, which you can get pretty much anywhere. I highly recommend it. It's got Castlevania 1, 2, and 3. And what else? I think it had 4 on it. What else? Kid Dracula's on there.
Yep.
And it's got so much behind just all kind of extras with it. Just go pick that up. It's so good. And I still go back and play Castlevania all the time, just because it's one of the greatest games, 8-bit games ever made.
And I was not introduced to this game until we started doing this show. And since then I've grown to appreciate, its history and just how fun these games can be.
Mm-hmm.
So I this was one that I had no doubt that it would be on your list.
And I feel like Castlevania 2 is getting a lot more love these days than it did back then. I don't think people just didn't understand it then, but now I feel like a lot of people are giving that game is finally getting its due. I've seen a lot of people putting up videos on YouTube about how good Castlevania 2 actually is.
Sometimes it just takes a little bit of time and being away from something. and then reintroducing yourself to it, and you're like, you know what, this really wasn't that bad.
Yeah, you know what that'll never happen to? Legend of Zelda 2. That's what it'll never happen for that game because that game's terrible.
Well, there's always the exception.
Yeah. Ooh, Rampage in the chat room. What's up, Rampage?
Rampage!
At my number 4 spot is, of course, Super Mario Brothers, for the reasons we talked about a little while ago. It's one of the most important games ever made. If it wasn't for Super Mario Brothers, we probably wouldn't even be gaming like we are right now.
Nope.
So,
nope, totally agree.
And then, of course, number 3, we talked about this as well, Mass Effect. I remember I had gone, at the time when Mass Effect first came out, I had just gotten, my Xbox 360, or, had it for a while, and I would just rent games at the time. So I remember going to Blockbuster, and I was trying to rent something that had come out recently around that time, but they didn't have it in. It was all rented out. So I saw Mass Effect 2, and I knew nothing about this game. I just looked at the cover, and then I looked at the back, and it said BioWare. And I was like, oh, these are the people that did Knights of the Old Republic. I'm going to rent this. Glad I did, because it was one of the best gaming experiences ever. And I immediately, went. I think what happened was I took it home and I played it that night. And the next day I took it back to Blockbuster so I could go to Toys R Us and just buy it because I knew I was going to keep it.
Yeah, this is definitely one that it ain't one that you rent and beat in a weekend. This is and I mean the game's good enough where you absolutely buy it and it's worth every penny. Just because the story is so immense and you feel like you're in a movie. You feel like you're in a sci-fi movie but you get to control the events that happen.
Yeah. And Chuck in the chat room said, you get your 5th Mass Effect coming sometime soon. I know it's coming, but after Andromeda, I am very, very cautious about a 5th Mass Effect game.
Cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I hope they correct their mistakes, but I'm not going to be heartbroken if it's another, I don't want to say failure, but failure.
Another Andromeda.
Yeah, another Andromeda. My number 2 spot, of course, Legend of Zelda. I mean, as with Super Mario Brothers, would we have the dungeon crawler type games we have today without Legend of Zelda? It's just one of the greatest games ever made. And yeah, it's been improved upon, especially, with Link to the Past and all that kind of stuff. But man, the original Legend of Zelda is still a good game to go back and play. Rampage. We're going to fight. He says,
see, I don't know if he actually means it or if he's saying it just to troll.
He's just trolling, probably. He says, I wish Mass Effect games weren't boring. You, sir, Joey's here,
we don't
too.
have it. Yeah, shout out to Joey Image.
Joey Potato.
Joey Potato! Should we call Rampage the official troll of Nerd Cave Retro?
Yes, the official troll of the Nerd Cave Retro show.
We love him, though.
Yeah.
We love him for it.
And at my number 1 spot is, drumroll please, Resident Evil. Not part 2, even though part 2 is still my favorite. Which, I don't know, 4 is pretty climbing the ladder these days. I've played through 4 twice in a row, and I'm going to go for a 3rd playthrough soon. But the original Resident Evil, it was good. It was pretty good back in the day on the PS1. But, man, when they did the remake for the GameCube back in, 2001, was it? That one's still good to go back and play.
Yeah, and I still remember being shocked that game was put on the GameCube because you think of Nintendo as like the family console. So I was very, very surprised. And I still remember the first time I played Resident Evil and the first time you see a zombie, and I'm just like, oh no.
That slow turnaround when it goes to
Yep.
cinematic, and that slow turnaround, still one of the greatest gaming moments of all time.
Yeah, it's so cool though. Like it scares you because like you're in it,
Yeah.
but when you think back and watch it, it's so good.
And with the remakes that they've done and how successful they've been with, Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4 remakes, and they're talking about doing Resident Evil 0 and Code Veronica later this year as remakes. If they don't go back and remake 1 in the new style, somebody needs to sit somebody down over at Capcom and be like, what are you doing? You are leaving money on the table by not doing that.
I would think they would.
They have
Like
to
it just
be.
makes too much sense not to.
Those remakes are too good to just not do 1. Why would you do everything else and not 1? Makes no sense to me.
I don't know. I hope they do because I'd love to play through another remaster
I would
or
too.
a remake of Resident Evil 1.
But for now, I'll just go back and replay Resident Evil 4 because eventually I'm going to get that infinite rocket launcher, and I'm going to stream an entire playthrough of that game with just using the rocket launcher.
Would you say Resident Evil 4 is your Days Gone?
I think so. It might be.
I respect it.
Yeah, it's a good game. You should play it.
I will eventually.
Yeah. But that brings us to the end of our top 5 lists. And before we go into your lists, we got to do some Patreon shout-outs.
As always, we like to shout out our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/nerdcaveretro. We want to shout out Romualdo Marquez, the Dungeon Master himself, Mr. Wally Phelps, Brian Piotrowski, Nick W., Eld the Zombie, Yup Fed, a.k.a. Knife, James, a.k.a. at Jimbo Jr., Raven, Danny House, Justin Nispel, Daniel Salmon, Mr. B. Res Coffee himself, Mike Eveland, Tyler Watson, Axeblade07, Armez Jackson, Carlos Longoria, a.k.a. I am the Rampage, Staff Sergeant Sketch, Gus and Penny, Matthew Salmon, Mr. Joey Potato, and of course,
Mama Diamond.
Donna Diamond. Thank you all so much for your continued contributions and keeping the lights on for us here at the Nerd Cave Retro Podcast. For as little as $1 a month, you get your own personal RSS feed with zero.
None.
That's if you're watching on YouTube, you see me holding up the big zero. Zero ads. If you want to listen to this show uninterrupted, it only costs you $1 a month. And you get your own custom feed, which is pretty cool. You also get your early access to our monthly bonus episodes. We mentioned it at the beginning of the show. We will be doing our own Dungeons and Dragons campaign, which, as someone who has never played Dungeons and Dragons at all, this is going to be really fun for me.
Yeah.
We have the we'll call it the pregame, where we actually build our characters, and you get to hear Wally walk us through everything. So that's currently up on the Patreon feed. Now, we also have commentary tracks that we've done in the past from Real Ghostbusters, Darkwing Duck, Tailspin, Gargoyles, full-length movies like Transformers the movie, Clue, Christmas Vacation. The list is near endless. So we're off to a good start in 2025 with the Patreon content.
And also, I release old episodes of Pop Culture Palette, me and Wally's old podcast. So about once every month or two, I'll release an old episode that you can only hear on the Patreon because it's not available anywhere else on the internet anymore. So if you want to hear some old episodes of me and Wally on the Pop Culture Palette podcast, go be a patron for Nerd Cave Retro, please.
Absolutely. You can head over to patreon.com/nerdcaveretro, or for new patrons, be sure to send us your social media info so we can give you a proper shout out.
And I don't have anything for this. Here, let's do this as an intro.
Hey, paisanos, it's the Super Mario Brothers Super Show!
So that is going to be our our theme for your top 5 lists, and the first one, it comes from Mr. Armez Jackson, who thank you, Armez, for constantly being our looker outer for articles on the internet. You make my job so much easier, sir. So thank you.
He's the official reporter of the Nerd Cave Retro podcast. My goal is to give everyone a role or a nickname.
Yeah. But thank you for doing what you do. And I'll have to send you some stickers or something here soon.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We'll send you something. But he says, tough list. I kept switching several of these games from my honorable mentions with my top 5. Exactly the same. I did the same thing. Anyway, here's my final list. His honorable mentions are Metroid, Dragon Quest, Mario Kart. I can't believe we forgot the Mario Kart.
I know.
Sonic, Batman Arkham.
Yeah, Arkham Asylum was fun.
And Splinter Cell. And his actual list at number 5, Grand Theft Auto. Number 4, Halo. 3, Legend of Zelda. 2, Pokemon Red and Blue. And 1, Super Mario Brothers.
That's a darn good, solid list.
Yeah, it is.
Let's see. Then we have Chuck, who was at Phil J. Barfly 74 on Blue Sky. It should always be 1, Half-Life, 2 through 5, anything else.
Yeah. Good old
I respect
Chuck.
it.
Good old Chuck in our chat room right now.
I respect it.
And we're going to move over to the Discord. And Mr. Joey Image up first, who suggested this top 5. Mr. Joey Potato himself, he says, top 5, part 1s in a series, no real order. He said, I would have included Days Gone, but damn, Sony says no sequel.
I figured he would have just put it on there anyway.
Yeah. Let's see. I'll do his honorable mentions first. Tony Hawk, which I can't believe we forgot Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's so many franchises out there that are so good. World of Warcraft, assuming expansions count. Of course they do. A game is going on 20 years now. Let's see. The Last of Us. That is a good one.
Mm-hmm, yep.
And even though that is only 2 games, we know there's a third one coming eventually,
yeah.
So that counts as a franchise. If it gets made into a TV show, it's a franchise.
Yeah.
At number 4, SimCity, the Super Nintendo version.
Super underrated game. I love that.
Yeah. Actually, it makes me want to go play that right now. And in the number 1 honorable mention, Metroid. And for his actual top 5 list, says Mega Man, Super Mario, Contra, Contra. I forgot Contra. Man. Number 2, Shenmue. And then last, Uncharted. Uncharted's another one that's got...
Yeah.
There's so many good franchises out there.
But that's what's so good about doing these lists is that people come up with different ones than you or ones that you completely forgot about, and you're like, man, why didn't I include that? Let's see. Next up, we have Nick W. His honorable mentions are Devil May Cry. I've never played any of the Devil May Cry games, but I've heard good things.
First one. It's fun to play, but I kind of didn't get bored with it, but it's just kind of like it's a button masher and it's fun, but it's like after a while it's just like, okay, I'm just destroying everything. So
yeah. Final Fantasy, Grandia, and Uncharted. Number 5 in his actual top 5 list, Super Mario Brothers. 4, Dragon Quest. 3, Tony Hawk Pro Skater. 2, Mega Man X. I actually really enjoyed the first Mega Man X game. I haven't played any of the sequels, but
I forgot that the Mega Man X series is a complete different Mega Man than the mainline series.
And his number 1, you'll enjoy this, Resident Evil.
Good man, Mr. Nick W. Which he also he popped up in the top 5 here, asking thoughts on the vacation movies. I love National Lampoon's Vacation and Christmas Vacation. European Vacation is ass, and Vegas Vacation is solid. And I kind of agreed with that. Christmas is my favorite. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Vegas is my second favorite. And the first one, Vacation, is my third favorite. And I never watch European because it's awful. But I think Vegas Vacation is very underrated.
I couldn't tell you the last time I saw Vegas Vacation.
Dude,
I haven't watched, other than Christmas, I haven't watched any of the vacation movies in years.
go back and watch it. It's so much funnier. Eddie is just as funny in that one as he is in Christmas. And there's so many good parts to that movie, especially the part where they go to the outskirt casino where they have games like War and like Guess Which Hand. Like that whole sequence is great.
Oh, man.
And up next, we have our community manager, Bethany Fox. Says honorable mentions are number 3, Red Out, 2, Burnout, and 1, Space Marine. Yeah, Space Marine was a great game. I always wanted to go back and replay that. Number 5, Doom. Oh, how did we forget Doom?
The Rock's movie kind of scarred me on Doom.
4, Splatoon. 3,
Splatoon's great.
Yeah, 3, F-Zero. This was the game that sparked my love for hyperspeed racing. I mean, how did I forget F-Zero, man? 2, Banjo-Kazooie, and 1, Dawn of War. This is a great RTS on PC, and it was what really got me into the world of Warhammer 40K.
Nice. Yeah, I was hoping that Banjo-Kazooie would be on his list, because I know we're both big fans of that game.
Yeah.
There's a YouTube channel I found recently called Nestalgia. It's spelled N-E-S-talgia.
Yeah.
And they do like synthwave and lo-fi remixes of retro game soundtracks.
That's cool.
They just put out an F-Zero synthwave one, and it's pretty awesome.
I'm going to have to listen to that tomorrow.
Yeah, there's a ton of good playlists on their channel. Next up, we have I Am the Rampage. His honorable mentions, The Last of Us, Contra, Resident Evil, and we didn't think of these either, Telltale Walking Dead. Telltale made some great games back in the day.
Those Walking Dead Telltale games, at least the first 2, are great. I never went past that, but I actually started replaying the first one a couple of months back on my Xbox because I re-downloaded everything I used to have on the 360, and I had the first 2 episodes of Walking Dead on the 360, and that game's great.
Let's see his actual list. I'm probably going to read these wrong because it's the way it's numbered is kind of weird, but I'll say Ninja Gaiden, Batman Arkham Asylum, Double Dragon, Super Mario, and Mega Man X.
Double Dragon's another one. Like, how did I forget about Double Dragon?
There's a lot of good franchises out there.
I know. Raven Ghostpaw popping in with number 5, Super Mario, number 4, Ninja Gaiden, 3, Final Fantasy, 2, Mega Man, and 1, Monster Hunter. This is the first Monster Hunter we've seen pop up.
Yeah. Justin Nispel is up next. His number 5 is Sonic the Hedgehog, 4, The Legend of Zelda, 3, Monster Rancher. I never played any of those games.
I didn't either.
2, Pokemon Red and Blue, and number 1, Donkey Kong Country. Great list.
And up next, we have our fact checker to the fact checker, Mr. Tyler Watson, which I'm kind of disappointed because he didn't send us a huge email this time, which I was looking forward to.
Funny story about that. I checked the Discord this afternoon and I saw that he was typing, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to read what he wrote. And then it was just a list, which is okay.
It's okay. We'll forgive you this time, Tyler. But next time, you step it up, buddy. Unless you're just busy, which we understand. But come on, man. You set a precedent for these top 5 lists. You have to live up to that precedent.
He set the bar, if you will.
For his honorable mentions, he said, sorry, I wanted to make sure I got it in on time. That's okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But he says his honorable mentions are Mega Man X, Donkey Kong Country, Ninja Gaiden, Punch Out, and Resident Evil. How did I forget Punch Out, man? Gosh.
That should be the title of this episode. How did we forget that?
How did we forget that? And I thought about this list for 2 whole weeks, just like, what am I going to put on this list? There's so many. And it had his number 5, Super Mario Brothers. Number 4, Tetris.
Ah,
Right?
all right.
Yeah. Number 3, Castlevania. Number 2, Mega Man. And 1, Pokemon Red and Blue.
That's an excellent list.
Yeah, Chuck wrote Monkey Island games in the chat room. Those are good too. I need to play one of those for the first one for to review on the show here. I've been meaning to do that for years.
No time like 2025.
Yeah.
Next up, from Knife, in no particular order, Pokemon, Tony Hawk, Contra, F-Zero, and Super Smash Brothers. And he also says, unpopular, I know, but it's my list, not yours. I love the confidence.
Yeah. But hey, buddy, you ain't the only one that said Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah, no, it was on my honorable mention.
Yeah.
So, and I love the original Smash Brothers.
And up last, but certainly not least, Morley 316 comes in with honorable mentions: Outrun, Rampage, Star Fox. See, I would have thought you would have put in I thought you were going to put Star Fox on your list.
Yeah, that should have been in my honorable mentions at least.
Yeah. Crash Bandicoot and R-Type. And for his official list at number 5, Fable. Great game, which I'm kind of excited about that new Fable game they got coming soon.
Yeah.
Oh, man, how to forget about this. Number 4, Plants vs. Zombies.
Those games were pretty popular when they first came out.
I just got done playing that a few months ago. Plants vs. Zombies is so freaking good. What happened to PopCap, man? Why is PopCap not making games anymore?
That's above my pay grade.
I think they're just worried. All they're doing is Bejeweled because it makes like $1 billion a minute. So they're not making anything else for whoever owns them now. But man, PopCap had a stranglehold on us for like 5 years there with like Peggle and Peggle 2 and Plants vs. Zombies. So many good games PopCap was making. I want more PopCap games, please.
Hashtag we want PopCap.
Yeah. At number 3, Final Fight. How? How? Hashtag never forget. Number 2, Gears of War. And number 1, BioShock. Good man. Good man.
First Gears of War
I know.
entry that we got.
How did I forget Final Fight?
Oh, there's several we forgot. I can't believe I forgot Star Fox.
It's crazy when it's always interesting, like before we do these actual lists, while I'm making it, I'm sitting here thinking I can't wait to read everybody's list so I can see what I forgot.
Yeah. But that's what's great though. You know,
Yeah.
they spark such great conversation. And you'd be like, okay, well, I haven't played that in forever, so I'll go back and do so.
Well, before we leave tonight, we do have a listener review that just dropped on Discord the other day from Mr. Nick W. And he says, the game I'm reviewing is Daxter, a 2006 PSP game made by Ready at Dawn. In it, you play as Daxter. Daxter is a bug exterminator. You go around Haven City doing exterminating jobs. When doing these exterminating jobs, you can collect precursor orbs and metalhead eggs. When you get a certain amount of precursor orbs, you have Daxter do a dream sequence. In these dream sequences, you basically have to kill a certain amount of enemies by pressing the buttons at the right time. Doing these dream sequences gives Daxter more health. The visuals for the game are great for the PSP. There's a nice variety of locations you go to, and the environments are nice and colorful. The way gameplay works is Daxter has a melee attack. He also gets bug spray, flame spray, and a bomb. The big spray and flame is used when jumping, and you can get increased height and traverse over larger gaps. The gameplay consists of platforming levels, and Daxter has gained the ability to climb up walls. It takes place after Jak 1, but before Jak 2. The game is available for PS Premium members and is a fun game, and it runs on the shorter side. So if you're looking for if you're a PS Premium member and you're looking for a shorter game to jump into, go give that one a try. So thank you, Nick, for giving us that review.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was always curious about this game. Like, I knew of it. I never had a PSP, so I never got a chance to play it. But I do remember seeing it advertised. So it's good to hear that it's a fun game.
Yeah, it's good to know that they've got those PSP games for available on PS Premium too.
Yeah,
because you don't want to see any handheld games go way of the dodo bird. We got to preserve those things.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And for next week, I think I'm kind of in a Star Trek mood. So none of the patrons told me which one of these they wanted me to play, either Vex or Star Trek Encounters. But I'm in a Star Trek mood, so I think I'm going to play Star Trek Encounters for the PS2 for my review next week.
I'll work on my Jean-Luc Picard accent before next week.
Number 1. And I'll have to come in like number 2, Jonathan Frakes, and like swing my leg over the seat to sit down.
I never understood why he did that. I felt like he was just showing off that he was tall.
I think he said they actually did. It was at Comic-Con one time. They're doing a panel. I think he said the reason he did it at first was because his back was hurting, and he only did it because he couldn't like sit down right, so he swung his leg over the chair, but then it just became a thing. Like that became his thing. So I don't know.
Makes sense.
That's the story he told, so that's what I'm gonna go with.
Yeah.
So
looking forward to hearing about it.
It's a character trait for, I'm just gonna sit weird for the entire duration of this television show. Tyler says we need to be drinking some Earl Grey tea hot next week.
Oh yeah, absolutely. that makes me think of one of the older Family Guy episodes. You know how they would do like the random cutaways to like 5-second things that would happen. Peter was like, "Oh, that's like the time I forgot how to sit down," and then he just jumps in a chair and he looks all mangled and broken and everything.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, man. But, yeah, that's what we're going to do next week. And, Derek, before we get out of here, tell everybody what's going on in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, so later this week, we're going to start submitting Plain Jane to some film festivals. So be on the lookout at facebook.com or Instagram /Plain Jane Movie to stay up to date on all those announcements.
Go check out the Open Micers podcast at Open Micers podcast on Instagram Threads. Last week was another hostful episode between me and Jacob. And I think that was what we talked about. Jacob went to the train museum and had quite an adventure at the train museum. And some other stuff happened. So just go listen to that episode. Then this week, I think we got Mo Alexander coming back on the show this week. So go check out the Open Micers podcast if you like comedy. And just remember, that show is NSFW. It's not safe for work or if you have kids in the back seat. So this show here is PG-13. That one's rated R. So be careful.
Wear headphones.
Yes,
when you listen to Open Micers.
But is that it for this week?
I think so.
All right. Well, let's walk out the door. If you want to email us at nerdcaveretro@gmail.com. Nerdcaveretro.com is our link tree, and that takes you everywhere you need to go. All the socials, all the ways to give us money, our Patreon, and, of course, our merch shop, which is at ncrmerch.com. We got all kind of designs over there. We have T-shirts, hats, magnets, bags, mugs, whatever your nerdy heart desires. And look, I get it. Christmas just happened. Everybody's broke. The economy's bad. And I ain't got $1 to give you guys every month. But you know what you can do? Just as good as $1. Go leave us a review and or a 5-star rating on all the podcasting platforms. Derek, please tell them what it's all about.
May the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.
Yeah.
you couldn't even beat a motley group of gnomes.
And that was an episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for hanging out in the chat. I love seeing an active chat room, man. It's so cool.
This was really fun.
Thank you all for hanging out, Chuck and Tyler and Nick and all you guys. Rampage, Joey popped up for a little while, Nick, all you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. So, be here next week. And if you haven't joined the Patreon, it's almost the end of the month. So on the 1st, go become a patron, and you get that almost 2-hour episode of us making our characters, which is totally worth it. And you're going to love it. So go do that. We love you guys, and we will see you all